has to be a quote unquote quickie.
Yes.
Well, welcome everybody to another episode of Dance to the Music. Special guest today is, and here we go. I didn't even ask her how I pronounce her name correctly because I've heard numerous versions already.
Me too.
Welcome Jenifa Mayanja. That will
Very
be
good.
Oh,
pretty good.
How do you say it?
Mayanja.
Mayanja. Okay.
Yeah. I think there's more of an emphasis on the ma and the ya
Ma.
and the ja. You got to
Okay.
put some oomph to it.
Welcome to this episode.
Thank you.
You've made it. We've made it. We're here. The reason why you're here, it's Saturday. It's I don't know, before your gig. That's the reason why you are in New York City. You're based in Connecticut. Tell me about your party, Back to the Deep. Number one, the title, and number two, what it means to you or what it portrays for you.
Okay, so Back to the Deep is a party that actually was started by Francis Harris, the co-owner of Public Records. And then he brought me in, like it had kind of started a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then he brought me in, we had some conversations. And our conversations were centered around how New York seems to have sort of fallen out of the conversation of deep house. And we thought, what a shame. This is one of the foundational blocks of house music, and somehow it became associated with everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And so we really wanted to do Back to the Deep as getting back to that quintessential deep energy spirit that is part of the New York version of house music, and just celebrate that. And so the party is sort of themed in that way, like try to stay more focused on deep house and just small variations of it. So when you come, you're not going to necessarily hear so many different styles of music. At least that's what we used to do, me and Francis.
Mm-hmm.
And then actually now it's just really more me, because Francis does another thing with Frank and Tony. And so it really just kind of became, it's me and special guests, people that I feel would represent deep house well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically it in a nutshell.
Okay. My follow-up question, and this can sound very generic and very redundant, but how do you personally define the term deep house?
I don't know if I could, right? So we say, I think there was a song which got beaten to death, but it also sort of like kind of crystallized really how you would describe deep house, which is, it is a feeling, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a way of being, it's a way of experiencing music in a certain way. So it's abstract and it's difficult to pin it down what it is, but you know that it's something that goes a lot more underneath the surface. It's not something that is superficial or just kind of middle of the road in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But I hesitate to define it because when you hear deep house, like everyone has their own version of deep house. But I would say, like, for me, people like Larry Heard, if you could say,
Mm-hmm.
like, that is more to me deep house. But since then, of course, there are many, many, many branches of it. But I would just say it's really a feeling. It's just a feeling. It's a way of being. It's more a spiritual thing to me than this is exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I guess when you hear it, you know it.
Yes.
The reason I ask also is because labeling, whether you as an artist label yourself or the music that you make, or as a consumer when you want to buy a certain type of music, it's hard sometimes to distinguish what you just described of a sound, if I can say that you don't even want to pinpoint as deep house, but compared to what is sometimes labeled as deep house. So that's why I asked you that question.
Yeah. I mean, when I used to work in a record store, also many eons ago. That was really sort of when it was really coming into its own. But even then, people would come in and say, "Oh, I'm looking for deep house," and so I'd give them something, and then they'd come back and they'd be like, "That's really mellow. That's not deep house." And then I'd say, "Okay, well, give me an artist," and then they'd say some artist, and I'd be like, "Yeah, it is house, but it's not deep house."
Yeah.
To me. So I think everyone has their own take on what deep house is.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. And I
Yeah.
think we all have apparently all different definitions, yeah, as
Yeah.
you said. Since you just mentioned it, I was trying to, since we're pressed on time, I was trying to skip a lot of previous parts, and you was like, "Here's Jenifa," and we're just gonna
Oh
jump
my
right
goodness gracious.
in. But since you mentioned it, I've read that you worked in the, I guess now, legendary dance tracks back in the 90s.
Yes.
And is it true that you were, can I say that you were mentored by Joe Clausel, or that he had
Absolutely.
an influence? Okay. So looking at how, and since so many years later you are still making music and DJing, how has that period of time, how did you experience it, and how has it influenced it based on what you're doing now, if it even has changed?
It was sort of, what do you call it, a formative experience, you know, in life, when you're going through those periods that are like, okay, I can say this is my like defining moment, and then it becomes moments.
Yeah.
And that was a defining time for me. First of all, coming to New York, coming in at that time as a woman was still, even now, but just imagine 20, 25 years ago, just how much worse.
I can only imagine.
And then working at dance tracks, one of only two women working there, which was still kind of odd, but the owners were really progressive in that they weren't like, "Oh, we're just going to have two women working here just because." They were like, "We want you to work here because we respect you as tastemakers, and we think that you would be, you would represent what we want to do here, dance tracks." And then following up with developing a friendship with Joe, who sort of took me under his wing and just sort of looked out for me and provided opportunities to learn about the business and trusted me, and just sort of, without necessarily like, "Okay, here's the door, I'm opening it," just sort of having that respect level that he gave me, and looking to him as a model of like, okay, this is how I want to be in this industry. I want to be myself. I want to show up as myself always, but I want to be unique. I don't want to be like anybody else. I want to just be myself, and not just follow along what everyone is doing. So that was very formative, and that shows up now in the way that, for instance, my DJ career, which people are always like, "Why aren't you so big? You should be here, you should be there." Well, I've made a lot of different choices that have put me where I am. And also as a producer, I've made choices that sit with me as a person. And as a result, right, I'm not going to be on the festival circuit or whatever it is. There's expectations that you've been in the business so long, you know, all these people, you've been here, there. Why are you not bigger or more commercial? Well, you know, there's like those roads in life, right? You take different roads and you get different options based on that.
On that note, how do you navigate being a DJ, a producer? I know you own 2 labels, if not more, if I'm not mistaken.
I did.
Your mother with kids who have to go to school, and so I say producer, DJ, and artist separate, because as a DJ, yes, you want to play, but then the role of like being an artist and then having to quote unquote promote yourself, and like being the person that you want, you know, you want to play at a festival or whatever. So I say these are separate roles sometimes. Back to the actual question, how do you navigate all these different things?
It's literally like you had like a whole basket full of caps in it,
Yeah.
baseball caps, and here's the producer, and I could just
And
put
you
the
just
producer
switch hats.
hat on, and then okay, put that down, and put the mom hat on, and put that down. And some hats work better with other hats. Like I can put the DJ and producer on maybe sometimes together.
Yeah.
And then also like, oh, okay, maybe I can sing. So I'm singing and producing. Okay, I can wear those two hats together. And you haven't even mentioned like I'm also a mentor now. So now maybe I can put
Right.
the three hats on: DJ, producer, label owner, and then sometimes even mom, because sometimes when I'm talking to people, there's a little bit of like mothering that goes on. So
Right.
I would say that it is difficult to navigate, but it also is me. I mean, I think I'm just built that way to just go in a lot of different directions. When I was younger, it was difficult to sort of keep it together. You sort of like scatterbrain. I'm here, I'm everywhere. But now I know myself so much, and even though it's different hats, it's still me. It's still Jenifa, just showing up
Okay.
in a different role.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Since we're pressed on time, I'm gonna ask one last question before, I don't know if they stop this here or whatever, and the rest we're gonna have to do online.
Yes.
There's way too much to talk about to not ask. But as a you mentioned the fact obviously that you're a woman in this industry, and that back then when you started it wasn't easy, and based on my few experiences, I don't it's I have positive and negative experiences. However, my question to you is, how has it changed, if it has the environment of dance, quote unquote, bigger picture dance music changed, and if it has, so for the better, and if not, what do you think can be made better, or if it can not made better from the other people, how can women better navigate, maybe, or like look out for?
Okay.
It's very
So
broad,
that was a
but
lot of
I
questions,
know.
and I'm going to try to sort
Pick
of
one.
make it's all connected, right?
Right, for
So
sure.
has it gotten better? Definitely. You know, I look, let's say, at your generation of women DJing, and there's so many of you, and you're so talented, and you're so like you're doing your thing, and the way you show up, it's sort of like not having generational trauma in a way, like you hope the next generation can do better, right? So like my generation, we were sort of in part of the pioneering in some sense. There was way others before us, but like we were still in that sort of like struggle.
Right.
And you struggle because you hope the next generation is not going to struggle as much. There's still struggle. There's still, you know, look at festival lineups and look at the charts on all the,
Yeah.
it's still a struggle, but it's not, I would say it seems a little bit better.
Right.
What can change? Well, society. I mean, this is all part of society, and it's just the way that society is, and just in all fields, women are paid less. They're not treated fairly, and that's the same in dance music. And I think in dance music, it might be worse in some cases because there is a lack of professionalism in general. And so when you have that sort of atmosphere and then add in all that sexism, and it's just a recipe for women not to get their due. Something that I did back in the day, and I kind of see it happening now. Maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong. It's just about coming together, sort of having a collective and reaching out to other women. And I see that from your generation. When I run into a woman I DJ somewhere, they're like, oh, great, let's connect. And that's what we used to do back in the day. Like, let's just connect. Let's connect. You know, if I see something, definitely I will, you know, open up that door if I can. And I think that's what we can do. It's just open up doors, connect, link up, collectives. I think there's just strength in numbers. We have to sort of do it for ourselves,
Yeah.
basically.
No, I agree. Thank you. I Hi
Hey,
Jennifer, how are you?
how, I'm good. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you, thank you.
Are you still jet lagged?
Uh, a little bit. I think it always comes around in the late afternoon is when I have a
Yes.
little
Yeah.
a slump.
That little dip.
Yeah, but other than that, so far so good. I guess I can
Yeah.
say I can say. How about you? How you feeling? I know you moved or recently,
Uh,
right?
yeah, I moved. I mean, that was a nightmare, but it's calmed down. It's calming down.
Okay.
And it was a big change, but that's all I've been doing the last 3, 4 years. So
Really? Oh no.
not moving, but just big changes. But
Big
it's like,
change. Okay.
I'm in that stage in my life where I'm just kind of like when you're in your 50s and you're just kind of like, okay, I just really want to have my life the way I want to have my life. I don't want to settle anymore. And
Understood.
so it's a big process. You have to clean out things. But when it settles, hopefully you're much more peaceful and calm and you have what you want.
Right.
So,
I understand.
I'm on
So
that journey.
I wish you all the best on the journey.
Yep.
Um, I listened to our little snippet from the last time, and we ended talking about women in the industry as a whole. I want to take a detour and then go back to your early journey and start there, if that's okay with you. And then we
Sure.
can come back and make, I guess, like do a full circle kind of situation. So it's kind of, I'll edit it so hopefully it's a cohesive interview at the end of the day.
Right.
But I wanted to start obviously not with your birth, but in your early days. And
With my birth would
yeah,
be
I know, right?
crazy.
That would be crazy.
They're like, what? I can't remember
Nobody
that.
remembers exactly. So I know you're born in Uganda, and then I read or heard an interview. You grew up in the Midwest, if that is correct.
Yeah.
The
So when I was a teenager,
mhm,
going on my 14th birthday, I would say, I moved to Kansas City, Missouri, which is really smack dab in the middle. I think they call it the heartland
okay,
of the United States. So I spent my formative years as a teenager in the Midwest,
mhm,
and it was a huge culture shock. I can't even um, fully express what that was like, and primarily probably made worse by the fact that I was a teen. And as a teenager, you're already going through that journey of self identity.
mhm,
And now you're put into this like world that makes no sense. And I didn't have my mom with me. It was just my father, who I hadn't seen since I was about 7 because he had moved to the United States. And so it was just me and my two older sisters. And um, so it was pretty awful. And also coming from a situation where, as far as our awareness of the world, like we had been given so much information, I would say we were more aware of what was going on here in America than Americans were of what was going on in Africa. So it was like this constant, like, just statements that were so ignorant, like, do you smell? Do you live in the jungle? Do you have a pet lion? Just dumb stuff
yeah.
that had to endure. And I remember that our nickname, me and my sisters in my school, we all went to the same um, private Catholic school. And We were called, the first year we were just called the African girls. No one would really say our names, but
That's crazy.
something clicked in me. I think it's just in my nature to rise above things. I just kind of took it as a challenge after the first year. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to use what I have, which is my intellect. And I just started excelling. And, I was on the honor roll. I was astute, the way I talked to my teachers. And so by the time I left there, I had gained respect of my peers just by being excellent in a lot of areas. So it was kind of like, you can call me the African girl, but I'm killing it. So have fun with that. And obviously, over the years, it wasn't as bad. By the time I was a sophomore and a junior, I had sort of found some people within the school that, were cool. We had the same interests and so on and so forth. But mostly what made it good was I had found a whole other life outside of school and found my people and young gay people that were like out or in the closet or whatever. And there was music involved and sneaking into bars and, music was involved. So it was like, you know what? You guys are lame. I got a whole, I got a whole life going on. You guys are just caught up in high school. Like,
Right.
I got a whole thing going on. So, it worked out the way I guess things work.
Right. Where am I? Oh, here we go. Sorry. Clearly soon I'm learning as I go along. My question also on that point is how much did music play a role in that time that you moved to the States, but also like was it always a role in your family even when you were still back in Uganda? And how did that role maybe increase throughout the years or like you getting older?
Music, I would say, has always played a big role for me personally. As far as I can remember, like it was always something for me that was not just something in the background. That's not just something you just listen to. Like it always
Mhm.
took on life. And I say that just because when I was young, talking about going back to childhood, the things that I do remember always involve some type of music. Like I do remember very clearly that my father had this big giant stereo. And if you're a kid that grew up in the 70s, your parents probably had um, sort of these combination type amplifier with a record player, and it was like a big giant beautiful piece of furniture. It was
Mm.
wood. And I remember I was just like enthralled with it. Of course I couldn't touch it, but every time music was like he'd play it, especially with the spinning and the music, I just was like, just there. And later, I also remember as I started we had this radio station that we would get only a couple of hours a day. It was from England, if I recall. And they'd play a whole variety of music. And every time it was on, I was just like into it. And still, actually, to the point that I was always trying to find ways to hear the music. I started sneaking into my sisters were in high school at that point. I started sneaking into their school dances. And my whole goal was just to hear music loud.
Mhm.
So when I came to the States and that first year or so, where it was just trying to like just survive, um, and I found those people that also had that same level of interest in music that was outside of the mainstream. I was like, this is really important for me as a person in in developing. And so music was like became a way for me to develop as a person, to know myself, what I like, um, the type of people I like to hang out with, my mindset, and just learning that I'm the kind of person that likes to function outside of the system. I like things that are on the fringes. I remember when we were younger and we were listening to new wave, and if something all of a sudden like connected with a bunch of other people, we're like, nah, we don't want that no more. That's not cool. That whole thing. You're like, that's not cool anymore because now too many people know it.
Right.
And I think like I still have a little bit of that with me when it comes to collecting stuff. I still want that stuff like nobody has. Or there's an artist that will be really cool, like, and then they become mainstream. I'm like, damn, now everybody knows that,
I know
So, so it's still a little bit like that. So I would say music has really been significant for me developing as a human being and having sort of that language that helps me get through like some pretty serious changes in my life.
Right. Was it
Yeah.
also something that you, at that point, kind of considered of making it your career, or something that you, maybe career might too big of a word, but something that you can make a living with? Or was there
I wouldn't
something that,
say living, but career definitely. When I was a kid,
Mhm.
very young, I can remember one of the things I said I wanted to do was I wanted to be a really famous singer. That was my dream
Okay.
when I was a kid. Like I just, you have those little concerts when you're a kid.
Not
For
just
me, the
when you,
concert, yeah, still have them now. Oh, I had a lot of concerts. I was a kid that was like in my head. I had a totally overactive imagination. I still do. Um, but I remember being outside and I just imagined myself on the stage, like, yeah, um, I'm gonna be music. That was always a thing. Like I just was like, I'm just gonna be in music. Um, so that career was always there. Now, professionally, I didn't know really, truthfully. It was like you have a dream. We have all kinds of dreams all the
Mm,
time. It wasn't really sort of DJing in a in an odd way was sort of the thing that kind of started me to really be serious about, oh, I could do this professionally. Like there are many ways to be in music. And it's not just as a singer or whatever, like there's a lot of ways you can express yourself musically. And so I would say in the career part, yeah, that was always there. That was always my dream. It
okay.
just took a kind of roundabout way to become a reality,
Got it.
you
Okay.
know.
And then maybe I'm jumping here, but when did you end up, okay, maybe I should. How did you end up starting to DJ? Does that go hand in hand with you coming to New York City, or was one or the other before? Did you start
The
DJing
DJing was before,
before?
and the
Okay.
DJing led into New York because then that became a real tangible thing that I could see myself like doing because I was like, I'm good at this. Like I had a innate, just a feeling like you're good with this. And it's not a technical thing. There's just something about the way that you put things together and how you're able to connect
Mm-hmm.
to an audience. Like there's something there. So the DJing started when I was in the Midwest and it kind of started sort of accidentally. I'd been collecting records. I'd been
Mm-hmm.
collecting for a little bit in the late 80s, and I kind of started to get a little bit more serious in the early 90s. And at that point, I was like all in and like dance music. Like I was like just hooked.
Mm-hmm.
And had another friend of mine, best friend at that time, he was also collecting music. And he had kind of started to fool around with sort of DJing. And I was like, hey, you know what? Can I just like, I want to sort of try it too. I remember also a little bit before that, we used to go to all these nightclubs in my town anyway. There was like a lot of dance places for young people where
Mhm.
we could just go dance. And I would always remember like I'd be there and like, okay, well, I'm happy I'm out, but hate this music. Like, hate it. It was dance music, but they just played like the same. Ugh, I just hated it. I was like,
Mhm.
I could do a really good job with the records I have, but I still wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna DJ. But anyway, so I asked my friend, can you show me? He was like, why? I'm like, well, I'm just interested. He's like, I don't think you'd be very good at
Wow.
it.
Okay.
And I was like, really? Okay, well, challenge accepted.
Mm.
So that was sort of how it started. Like, I'm going to show him, like, I can. I had no equipment. And so I remember my first mixer. Some of the OGs might know this. There was a store called Radio Shack.
Yeah.
So I went to Radio Shack. They used to sell mixers. So I went to Radio Shack, bought a mixer. And then I had these turntables I think I found in a thrift store or something. One of them was a really beautiful turntable. I'm sad that it sort of disappeared in many moves. But there were belt drives, and belt drives means it had no pitch control. Not really. You kind of have to use your thumb to sort of try to manipulate, and there's no torque, so you can't really like cue up the record properly. So yeah, it was kind of hell, but I was determined. I was determined, like, I know I can do this. I
Mhm.
know. So fast forward, and we used to have this thing that we would do at my friend Theo, known as Theo Parrish. We used to go hang out at his apartment once a week, myself and a couple other people. And at that time, like, I think I'll say maybe it's mid 90s, something like that. So at that point, like I said, I'm all in music, and there was no real record store where I lived. So I used to mail order records from New York. And so we would get together. I would say probably once a week, we would get together with all the stuff that we had bought. And we'd sort of have this back to back to back to back to back to back session because he had professional turntables. So I sort of was like a training ground. I mean, we just got together for fun and just to play our records and exchange music. And I actually really learned a lot about music from him. And we had another friend, he much older person. He had a lot of music, and so we would just play and play and play and play for hours, and sort of got better at DJing with that on the technical end, but also with how do you put stuff together, not just thinking about beats, but like feeling, with like thinking about connection. Um, how do you move through different genres? So I was sort of like training through fellowship, through osmosis.
Mhm.
And fast forward. Um, I was really good at this point in terms of the technical aspect of it. I'm still growing, learning as a DJ. But I visited a friend in New York, and I was blown away. Like, I went everywhere, and it was like just house music. You know, we're talking about the golden era here. It's like every club you went was just playing house music. And I think I've told the story before about how I walked into this club and they were playing Kerry Chandler Atmosphere. And I think I just bought that record at the time, and I never heard anyone play that in a club. And I was like, what? Oh, no, no, I have to come here. Like, this is the place. My friend was like, well, I know you're really into house music. I think you need to move to New York. But I was like, New York, it's just so big. I don't know anyone there. Like, what am I going to do? So I did move. And I really, a series of very lucky events happened. I walked into a bar in the East Village, and it turns out a friend kind of a friend, someone that was in our circle from my hometown, worked there. And he was like, "Oh, you know what? Don't you DJ?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Okay, well, they just like they're hiring DJs because the last DJs quit. So maybe you want to try out." And I did. And I got the gig, and that was my first gig in New York.
Dope.
I just, yeah. So it's a lot in between. I'm just
Of
like
course. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
condensing the version
For
story.
sure. And eventually, how long after that did you, as we talked about before, end up working at Dance Tracks?
Ah, I don't know how long. I wouldn't say it was very long. I'd say within a year
Okay.
or so, I had been shopping at that point after I'd settled into New York. Um, One of the things I was excited about was I no longer had to mail order records. I could just go into record stores and buy records. At
Mm-hmm.
that time, there were no listening stations in record stores. So you had to ask the DJ behind the booth to play the record for you.
Oh, okay.
And nobody would play the record for me
What?
because I was a girl, because I was a woman. I was ignored completely. I remember just walking in stores, just completely ignored. I'd have like my little stack of records. They would just talk right over me like I didn't exist.
Wow.
And so I don't remember how I ran into dance tracks. It was just sort of like, I don't know. Randomly, I walked into the store, and when I walked in, everyone greeted me like, "Hello, how are you?" And I was like, "Wait, they see me? I'm here." So that became sort of my go-to store because they just treated me with some respect.
Mm-hmm.
And so then over time, they approached me. They had at that point, I don't know if they had any, they had a woman that worked there, but she was just like in the back. So they just came to me and they were like, "Well, we liked your taste in music. We see the stuff you buy here, and we like your the presence you have about yourself. Which do you want a job?" And I was like, "Do I want a job? Are you kidding me?" So that's how I got my job there, and just very happy um, sort of experiences and attention and connections came
Mm-hmm.
from that. Very, very fortunate opportunity that kind of fell in my lap.
Mm-hmm. And we also we talked about this. What is going on here? Oh Lord.
Technology.
Yeah, it's not even, I don't have a lot of Zooms, so that's why I don't really do all
Uh,
these views. It's fine. Nobody needs to see me. I just wanted to try. Okay, that's cool. My question is, as we spoke earlier as well, you met Joe Clausel, and who became eventually your mentor and a figure that you mentioned you looked up to. Did you meet him through dance tracks, or like was there other? Okay.
yeah, definitely
Okay.
through dance tracks. He was also he had a reputation in New York, but he was not yet, I think, I could be wrong, sort of the breakout superstar producer DJ that we know him as now.
Mhm.
He was starting spiritual life music, really putting his stamp on what would become the sound that we know him for now. Um, and I would say his mentorship was not like, "I'm your mentor." His
Right.
mentorship was like, "I see you. I see you're a genuine person. I see that you love music. I see that you have been sort of sidelined in some ways and just simply because of your gender. Um, so I want to be there for you. I want to give you any opportunity that I have for you to participate in this record store, in this label, eventually into this party, which was Body and Soul as it was starting out. And sort of be there for you with advice like, okay, if this person is talking to you this way, or don't get involved in this, and so on and so forth. So that relationship developed definitely being at Dance Tracks, because we had that time together. He was in the store a lot, especially as spiritual life started to grow and they started to release music. So he was always there for me. He would always talk to me. He would give me encouragement, and, keep doing your thing, and stay true to what you're doing. Don't worry about what other people are telling you to do or how you should be. Watch out for that. So that only happened through being together in that very special time, in that very special place, which was Dance Tracks.
Okay.
Yeah.
How long into your DJ journey did you get the thought of that you wanted to make your own music? That, as we call it now, wanting to produce?
I don't know where exactly I got that thought. I think that because of that dream that I had when I was a kid about wanting to sing, I think what I discovered that it was possible to sort of make music without a whole band. I mean, making music by computers was still sort of relatively new. There was some DAWs, but you had to have a lot of money to have those. They were very expensive. I think it was just Pro Tools and Logic. And you have to go into a studio, what have you. So there was this part of me that was like, okay, well, I feel like I want to make this statement, but how am I going to make the statement? Again, I have no equipment. I don't know how I'm going to get equipment. I don't know the first thing about it, but I still feel like since I've done this one thing, which is DJing, I think I want to make the leap into this other thing. And then at that time, I made some other connections, and I think people at that point, I don't know why people were necessarily asking me to sing on their records. I think just because, again, of my gender. So really, what else can you do but just sing? Which sort of like leads me a lot into why I don't sing so much on other people's records, because people have asked me over the years, will you sing? Will you sing? Will you sing? Will you sing? One of the reasons I've said no consistently is because I don't want to be lumped in the category of you're just a vocalist. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a high profession. It's a beautiful thing. But I already saw where this was going. If I just did that at that time, like, oh, they're just going to put you in that category and that's it. So anyway, because I had no equipment, and because I'm that kind of person that's always trying to think of, oh, I can't do this, but how else can I do this? Someone invited me, I think it was Anthony Nicholson, who I was connected with through Ron Trent, was like, okay, well, let's do something. So I remember going to Chicago to his studio, and we made my first record, which is called Light Shines Truth. It's the group is called The Descendants. So if you go on Discogs and you look, I think that'd be the first thing that I released. But it still wasn't my production. I wrote the lyrics, I sang, but I wasn't in charge. And that was sort of the theme for a couple of years, just kind of like, because I didn't have my own way of making music. It was like, I was just like, I got to find a person I can do this with. And it was pretty frustrating because I still wanted to do my thing, express myself, but it was also difficult to express myself with another person who has the equipment, who's going to tell you, well, I know more. And one of the things that I want to do in my mentorship program right now is to teach artists how to be able to not only collaborate, but find the right words, the right language of collaboration, being able to communicate your ideas where they're received and respected. Because a lot of times people have ideas and they get clamped down and they get like, sort of diminished.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason it gets diminished is because you don't have the right language, the right way to communicate to somebody else where they're like, I'm not thinking about, okay, well, I have X amount of years of experience. I'm really just listening to you because it doesn't matter the years of experience. If you have a good idea, if you have good ideas,
Mm-hmm.
they're still valid. It doesn't matter you made music for 1 year. Now, a person that's made music for 25 years, they definitely have experience. They definitely have know-how, but they ought to actually listen to this person that's also made music for a year because they probably have some fresh ideas. They probably have some fresh perspective that could be useful. So imagine the lot of experience with the fresh perspective. If you do that right,
Mm-hmm.
that could be a very powerful combination. So to go back to your original question about when, I don't know how it's sort of led this way, but I feel like it was a natural progression for me, like from DJing to production. It just made sense
Mm-hmm.
to do that.
Yeah. I have a few titles that I've written out that according to what was listed the year that it was released, they have like different years. Your track, or it was also the title of your album, I believe, Woman Walking in the Shadows. Um, and then there's Orbit 2, which came out on is a Bass Cadet
Bass
Records?
Cadet.
Yeah, in Berlin. And then your latest, is it one of your latest records? On the Edge of the Horizon, which came out on Soul
That's the
Aspect.
latest one.
The
Yes,
latest,
on
okay.
Soul Aspect. Yeah.
So not necessarily those titles specifically, but just throughout the years, how has the process of making music changed for you over the years? Like maybe technically also, you said you didn't have equipment when you first started. I'm assuming eventually you required some, or like, are you now completely using software? Are you using hardware? Like just technically, but also emotionally, or your approach maybe has changed as well.
I mean, now I have my own equipment, thank the Lord, but it's still pretty minimal in comparison to maybe other producers you might talk to that have whole studio worth of gear. I think for me, I came from the tradition of instrumentation where you had a pianist play the piano, you had a guitarist play the guitar. And so it wasn't digital where you have the sound and then you create everything. And so because of that, when I was making music, I just really wanted software and sort of the means to be able to have that. And that didn't necessarily mean that I needed to have everything. I just need to have one thing that could be able to allow me to do that.
Mhm.
So my setup as far as technical is pretty simplistic. I have a lot of plugins. I have a keyboard. I have couple of doodads like shakers and little noisemakers and things like that. Controller. I have a drum machine. Don't use it that much, but I have a drum machine. And yeah, really my mic. And that's it. I don't feel like I want to get more stuff. I feel like when I'm ready, actually, for my album that has been sort of a thing, what I want to do is go back to the way I was making music, which is I write it, I compose it, and then I bring in musicians, I work with musicians, collaborate with musicians, and parts where, okay, this is where a violin would go, find a violinist. This is where percussion would go, find a percussionist. So Like that's the complexity, as far as complexity would go, that I want to work with. But as far as hardware, no, I don't have 1,000 different types of keyboards and like all the latest synthesizers, and like I don't need them. Actually, I think they would get in the way of the way that I think, because it just takes me a long time to feel like, okay, this idea I have is worthy of being developed. And then it's a slow process of, okay, so I'm developing it. How do I want to develop it? Do I want it to be abstract? Do I want it to be straightforward? What's the message here? You know, I think in 3D, when it comes to creative, you talked about, well, creatively, how does it go? Has it changed? Yes, in some respects, I've managed to sort of wield it. When I made my first record, I had so much, just way too much ideas. I really didn't know like how to sort of process them. Which ideas do I really want to use for this? I can't use all the ideas. You know, I have to pick a lane. And so now I'm getting better and better and better and better and better at, these are the ideas, these are the influences, these are the inspirations. Okay, how do we want to do it? Do we want to do a concept album? Do we want to just do a mood? Do we want to do it as a genre? Do we want to be genre fluid? So now I can control the ideas a lot better, which I think is good as an artist. I think you can hone the message better once you get control of like the lane that you want to be in. You can be a lot more powerful, a lot more impactful. So I think I've grown as a person. I've also grown as an artist, able to do it, I think, better. My aspiration, of course, is to reach, I haven't reached the level that I want to be at. I'm still growing. I still want to hit that mark. Maybe I'll get there, maybe I won't, but you know, it's good. It's fun to be in development. I like that.
Yeah, for sure. Talking about you growing as a person and as an artist, and also in relation to what we spoke about before, what is your advice in like finding your voice, and not necessarily your sound, because I think that's probably subjective, but your voice in, I guess, this music thing. Let's just let's just use the term music thing, because in our previous when we met in person, you said something along the line of you made decisions that put you in a certain place. I guess it was your answer to people saying, "Oh, you should be here, you should be there, you should be playing here and there." Um, so going back to my question, like, how do you stay true to yourself, and how do you like find that voice that, you know, because there's so many distractions in this journey or on this journey. So how do you stay to be like, no, no, I'm doing my thing. It might not, go here or there, but yeah. And
How do
just
you do your
listen.
thing?
How do you, I should have started with that. How do you do your thing? Exactly.
How do you do your thing? I mean, you know, sometimes the simplest question answers what the question is, and what the answer is. And the answer, and this is really a key component of actually what my mentorship is about purpose.
Yes.
Before you do anything, that's not just music, anything that you want to do in life. I'm not talking about getting up and having your tea or your coffee. Talk about the jobs, talking about the people you choose to hang out with. You have to ask yourself, what's the purpose of this? Why am I doing this? I think the why that I'm doing this, it sounds simple, but it's so many layers. And at the end of those layers should be a simple answer. I'm doing this because I enjoy being with people. I'm doing this because I want to heal people. Okay. Like for me, my music, if you go and you listen to all of it, you're like, there's a sort of healing element in what I do. And I think that that's the message for me. There's a healing. So there's not a healing if there's not a uplifting, um, if there's not a connection, I don't want to be involved in it. So if I take all these other steps, if I took those steps that other people were telling me to take, then my music wouldn't be that. It wouldn't have that subtext of healing, of uplifting, of empowerment, of self determination. It wouldn't have any of those things because I'd be doing things for another purpose, which could be fame, which could be um, trendy, which could be to get the attention of a very particular person. But that's not how I roll. That's not my purpose. And so I say to people that are on this journey is you have to keep asking yourself the why until you get the answer, until you hear the answer, or until you connect the dots. How have I been? Okay, I don't know where to start with that question. Why? That's a huge why. How do I even start that? Okay, let's look at the evidence. Let's look at how you've lived your life. Let's look at what you've been attracted to. Let's look at the people you hang out with. Let's look at the music you listen to. Let's look at your process. Those things can help you to start to put together a story. Oh, this is my purpose. This seems to be thematically, or I don't like that. So if this is my purpose, I feel like um, I want to be energetic. Like I want to energize people. Okay, I've been doing it wrong. What can I do now that connects with that? So I always go back to people when I'm coaching people. It's like, what's your why? What's the purpose? Why are you doing this? Why did you get into music? Well, I got into it because I want to play keyboard. Okay, that's not telling me anything. Why? There had to be something there. Why? Maybe you were moved to just tears to your core because you heard this piece of music and you're like, damn, that just changed my whole life. Okay, so that's what you want to do. You want to change people's lives. That's your purpose. Okay. Once you get that, there's something that clicks in you. And when you try to do other stuff, it doesn't align anymore. It doesn't feel good. It feels uncomfortable because you decided what the purpose is. Now, the purpose can be evolving, it's not a static thing, it can change, it can grow as you grow. And then you decide that's your new purpose. Like one of my purposes now is about legacy. It's about having conversations like I'm having with you and leaving some pieces of advice, of inspiration that someone somewhere can look at and say, hey, they did their thing their own way. Maybe I can do my thing my own way. So that's a big part of my purpose right now. It's about legacy, leaving something, giving back something um, as much as I can. So everything is about purpose. Why? Why are you doing this? Why are you playing that gig? Why are you doing it? I would turn down things all the time. Why are you not doing that gig? Don't you need money? I do need money. But that's not really connecting to what I want to do as a creative person. Um, that's not saying I'm going to turn down everything. Sometimes I have to make decisions. I've had to make decisions like, okay, if you're going to do this thing, how am I going to connect this back to my why? Because I'm not 100% happy with being a part of this. But I try to make those very rare exceptions because I want to look at myself in the mirror and be okay. Like I don't want to
Yeah,
hate myself like, damn, why'd you do that, John? Like, no.
yeah, I
Um,
understand.
yeah.
Oh, okay. And you mentioned your mentorship program already. Um, Generally, what in regards to mentorship, I wanted to ask you how, obviously, you mentioned you had one or maybe even more. How important is it to have a mentor and then also to be a mentor for you personally? And then how that translate into your program. Like, I think I have an idea of how the program came about, but like what made you start it officially, and like just tell me a little bit more about it and how people, I don't know if they can sign up or if you choose the people that you mentor or they can just reach out to you.
Okay,
Oh.
so let me see if I can remember the whole line of questions. Um, how important is it to have a mentor? I think in everything that we embark on in life that's important to us, it is important to have a mentor, someone that has been on that journey in some way,
Mhm.
um, that can help you to navigate what comes with whatever the journey that you're on. So I do think a mentor is important. Um, in the world, in the real world, sometimes the mentor picks you. They see something of themselves in you and they decide to take you under your wing. As women, it's very difficult for us in any field to have mentors. We've been conditioned to sort of get away from each other, to sort of turn away from each other, because when we're in groups, we get immediately labeled. Oh, they're this, they're that. And so our natural inclination is to go away from each other as opposed to coming together. So, in that regard, it's really essential, putting it back in this thing that we do, to have mentors, because it's a perilous journey. Even now, I mean, some of the things you were kind of like, oh my God, that happened. There's still a lot of things happening. I'm sure you can attest to that.
Mhm.
So I think for your generation, it's nice that you can look and see, like, there's a lot of different types of people excelling in a lot of different types of way. There's no one way. Whereas maybe in my generation, there is maybe one or two ways you could be successful. So having a mentor is key. As far as my own mentoring, I think you mentioned, how do I pick people or do they pick me? I think
It's,
I don't.
you don't, okay.
I don't pick people because I have a program that people pay for. And I have different types of offerings, and that's mentoring and coaching. So there's a little bit of life coaching in there where we're dealing with mindsets. And I think as a creative, one of our biggest issues is what we think of ourselves and how we use that information to go out in the world. So a lot of the times I'm dealing with people and their mindsets because they've conditioned themselves to think this is the only way. I have to be on social media 24/7 talking about myself, da 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 da, or I'm just not going to make it. Okay, so imagine, like, you're thinking this is your only way. How deflating that is. I've tried to do social media. I'm tired. I get tired. I'm not. That's why I'm not there like that, because I get drained. Anytime I try to do it on that level where people were telling me you need to do this, you need to grow your page, I'm tired immediately. And I feel like my spirit kind of like coming out of me. So imagine you're starting out and everyone's saying, hey, you want to make it? This is what you got to do. You got to put out one record every month. You got to be on social media 7 days a week. Um, you got to write every single person. Make sure like you can gig X amount of times. My God, you're already failing before you even started. So you're like, I can't do this, and you're sort of frozen. And so my programs are about getting people from that frozen state and sort of opening up their mind to, there are a lot of ways. You're going to have to create them and you're going to have to nurture them, but it is possible. It's totally possible in a lot of fields. A lot of the people that have made it, a lot of the people that have achieved the success they want, they had to make it. They had to create it. They had to nurture it. Nobody came and said, oh, here's your perfect opportunity. And if there is, in this day and age, it's paid for. Okay. So if you have a lot of money, You could just throw money at it.
Mm-hmm.
That's one way. But if you're like me and you're like, I want this to mean something, anything that's going to mean something in life, you have to work for it. There's no shortcut.
Right.
You just got to work. You just got to put in the time to make it work. What was the last part of your question?
No, that sums it up. Yeah.
Okay.
Just if whatever you want to say about your program, I wanted to know more about it. Because
Yeah.
I've seen it on social media, and sometimes there are different based on my experience, there are different kind of mentors where some, like you say, they pick their mentees, so to speak. And then there are mentors where you can approach them and then you can ask them, or that. So I just wanted to know more about it and
Right. How that
how you
works.
set it
Yeah.
up, and it looks, are the people that you have in your program, are they all musicians, or are they like different kind of artists? Because what you just spoke about, I think applies to not just musicians, just an artists in general.
In general, I did have to make a conscious choice. In the beginning, it was more I wanted to work with creatives because I think I see a lot of like interplay, a lot of like over arching sort of issues within these sort of creative industries, sort of the same things. And most of the issues are because people have been told there is one way to be successful and there's only one kind of success. Okay. So the one kind of success can be you sold X amount of records or your movie made X whatever millions of dollars. Most of the success is measured monetarily. That's it. There's no other kind of success. So with that said, a lot of people have it in their mind. Their mindset is geared of if it's not selling X amount of units, if it's not making X amount of money, I'm failing. I did have to sort of kind of bring it in a little bit and say, let me focus on music creatives because that's my field. So my program works with, like I mentioned, mentoring and coaching because the coaching part addresses the mindset issues. And I can't do any work with people and helping them figure out the paths they could take if I don't address their mentality, if I don't address what is the trauma, right? Because we're like traumatized. You've been like gaslighted all the time. You're not succeeding because you didn't do this. If you only did this, right? And so you're doubting yourself. When you come in, you're just broken. Like, I don't know. I don't even know who I am anymore.
Right.
That's what we're dealing with. So I have to deal with that with people before I can say, okay, now that we're getting somewhere with this, what do you want to do? You know, I was working with a duo of people and they were like, you know, we got into some stuff. And a lot of times with the coaching, I have to sort of remind people I'm not providing therapy because it starts to feel therapeutic when you're working with your mind because stuff starts to come up with, oh, well, you know, my dad said I could never amount to this. You know, everyone thought, why am I doing this? Why did I leave my country? What, you know, all kinds of stuff. And then I have to help people separate, okay, this might be stuff that you might need to go talk to somebody that's certified to help you deal with this very real trauma that you've been through in your life so that you can be a better person, thereby a better artist. And then this is the stuff the industry has done to you. Okay, this is stuff the industry is going to continue to do. How are you going to fortify yourself to exist within this very toxic, negative industry? What are you going to do? Because it's not going to end. And somehow you're still going to have to be a beacon. You're still going to have to rise and function within some parts of it and then have people find you within that very dark cloud, that's the industry. So my program works by, look, this is what I have to offer. You come in, we'll customize a program for you based on what you tell me, and then we work, and then you find out, oh, wait, I need more. And so what I've been doing as I've grown as a mentor and a coach is telling people, you need to work with me at least 6 months before you really start to understand really what it is that you've been through and where you want to go next, because you start to discover, wow, this is why I haven't been going anywhere. This is what I'm dealing with. This is the very real stuff that's been happening to me. And I kind of need to get my power back. Like, it's been a lot of people, the power has been gone. They have no self-determination. They have no energy, nothing. It's just been zapped. So we need to get that back. So that's what I do as mentor coach, can help people get that, feel that energy, that spark again. That's sort of like that excitement you had when you decided, you know what, I want to do this music thing somehow. I want to be involved. And then we work from that. Then we go from there and help you plot out, a career, set some goals.
That's amazing. I just had a thought while you were talking, and I try, maybe that has nothing to do with anything. However, I know that you lived in Berlin for a while. I don't know how long, and it doesn't matter. But I wonder um, if living in a different country or a different city, what kind of influence it had in you being an artist. Like, did you see things differently than you did before at that time? The reason I'm asking is kind of personal, because all the things that you just mentioned of like people having no more power and no more energy, all these things, me personally, sometimes I go through that when in New York City. And then when I go away, all of a sudden that disappears. So I'm wondering if you had a similar experience as well when you went somewhere else, that you felt very different about, I guess, the music industry in general, but also like your artistry. I guess if a location makes a difference.
It does make a difference. I mean, New York is a tough place, but I came into New York, I think, because a lot of good things happened at the beginning of my career. I have a special relationship with New York where I feel comfortable, even though it's completely changed. And I think because internally I'm sort of a competitive person in some ways, like I overcame one of the toughest places you can be as a person and as an artist. I managed to really do something significant there. So New York doesn't scare me. But that said, I don't live really in New York anymore. I live in Connecticut, which is a very kind of sedate world, far removed from the day to day. And that's because I'm the age that I am. I've been through the paces. Again, I'm doing this work. I've been doing this work. So I'm not brutalized and put through the mill all the time with the politics, with the power plays, all of that. I'm in a totally different place in my career. And if I was where you are right now, maybe living in New York, I would be drained. In terms of Berlin, Berlin for me was not a good experience, personally and creatively, because for me it felt closed in. For me, there was a diversity missing that I understood was something that was important to me. So for me, it sort of took me in a darker place that I didn't like as an artist. So for me, it wasn't a good thing. But location is important. And I think what you're speaking of specifically is sort of like that place where you feel free to be yourself. And for you, that might be your home country, right? So where you go, where you're like, oh, here I feel a certain freedom. I'm not burdened by, I have to be this, I have to be that. Maybe I have to be on, maybe I have to know this person. I have to put on a different mask to be here. Those things are exhausting to maintain all the time. So it's kind of like, how are you yourself wherever you go?
Right.
And that's also sort of growing up and also part of, let's say, professionally, what I teach people in mentoring is how can you just be sort of like, I don't care what's going on. I don't care what the trend is. I don't care. This is what I'm comfortable with. And you have to sort of be active with that. Like, that's not a passive thing where you're like, well, it'll get better. I'll feel better. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I just woke up wrong today. You have to actively, like, okay, I don't like the way I'm feeling. I feel drained when I'm here. What is it? What do I need to remove? What do I need to do different so that I maintain this feeling that I have, and or make a decision? Like for me, made a decision like I don't like being in Berlin. I don't like professionally what it's like for me. I don't like it as a person. It's not taking me where I want to be. So I got to bounce.
Mm-hmm.
For my well-being. I have to leave. So it may be that. And it's heartbreaking. I've moved enough times. I'll tell you one place I lived where it was not for me was Chicago. I went to school in Chicago. I'd wanted to go to Chicago. Lived in Chicago for about a year and a half, and I was miserable. And nothing worse than you had a dream to be somewhere, and then you get to your dream, and your dream is a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
But I had the presence of mind to say, okay, that's it. I guess I gotta go. Why stay miserable? For what? There's no badge. If you're in a position to be able to figure out a way to change. That's kind of like what I said at the beginning of the interview. I've been in a process of changing. It's really sort of more like just getting rid of stuff that's no longer serving me and being like, why be miserable? For what? Like, for what?
Yeah.
Choose to live your life the way that you want to live it. So it's like you can come to New York and be like, okay, New York is the only place if I really want to do this thing and music that gotta be. You could actually be anywhere now, really. I mean, that may have been true maybe 20 years ago, whatever it is, but you can be really anywhere and do your thing. You don't have to be in New
Right.
York. So if it's not somehow fulfilling you and also taken away from your artistry, because you don't want that. You don't want to get to the point where you're like, oh God, I don't even want to dance anymore. I don't want to play records anymore. Like, no,
Mm.
no, you
Yeah.
shouldn't do that.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
where do you, as an artist, where do you see us? You just like you mentioned, you in a stage where you just get rid of things that don't serve you anymore. Where
I
do
mean,
you?
it's not that easy, by the way. I'm not trying to make it like
No,
it's
absolutely
not
not.
easy.
Absolutely not. No, no, no.
It's not, it sucks for a while, really sucks. And you're like, question your life choices. But on the other end of that, you're like, oh, okay, this is why I did it.
Yeah. What is the goal that you're moving toward an as an artist, as a producer? Um, do you set yourself certain goals that you just said you're a competitive person, so I can imagine yes.
Yes, I definitely, one of the decisions I made a couple of years ago, for instance, with my production was to sort of go back to when I started my label, a lot of people don't know that I have this label, Bumako, which was the original label that eventually started to release my own music. And when I started that label, it was about really just having an avenue for me to do whatever I wanted. I didn't want to hear any more person's crap, do this. I was like, no, I'm going to put my money into this thing and just do what I want. If people like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. But I also had this idea in my mind. I had these artists that I looked up to, like Sade, who would release one album for like 3-4 years, and like everybody would just be like, oh my God, whatever. So I had this idea of being an artist that produces albums. Really, that's what I wanted to do. Just make a piece of music that's really, really good and leave it be for a while. So I kind of want to just get back to that. I just want to make long form music. I want to make albums, and just do that, but make it a really good album. And that's why it's taken me a while. So that's my goal now. Just make really good albums, maybe once a year, maybe once every other year, but ideally once a year, and sort of resurrect my label. It's been sort of dormant in a way because I wanted to make vinyl, but vinyl has become so cost prohibitive. And one of the reasons I've kind of started to release music for other people that are able to see my vision as well and help me in that way, have that as a medium that's still accessible to me. So that's one of my goals. My DJ, I've kind of reached my goal right now, which is I always wanted a residency. And I have an amazing residency with an owner that totally sees me as an artist, that totally celebrates me as an artist, that allows me to just be me. So sort of like I reached the pinnacle of DJing. I have no wants of that. I'm not like I gotta go on world tours and I gotta hit that place. I love playing. There was a point where I was like, especially during the pandemic, where I was like, you know what? Maybe I'm done. Maybe I'm all done. And then things started coming, and then I've started kind of getting energized again. So what I love right now, because I don't play as much, when I play, I'm on fire. Like I am totally connected. The music is just flowing, and there's this excitement and this fun and sort of this like affirmation, like, yeah, all those years, all those decades, it was not for nothing. You know what you're doing. So I am like really in this phase where I'm excited about DJing. Like I love it now. And there was years where I was like, I'm over it. I'm done. I'm like, I'm so done. Like I can't anymore. I'm done. So now, so with the teaching, I've sort of hit kind of good. I've kind of reached like the top for me. I talked about levels of success, and some people's level of success is like they're out gigging every month or every couple of weeks. I reached my level. And now I have other horizons. I have other things on the horizon that I'm working on with this writing. I'm developing my writing, something I said I'd do in my 50s. I'm doing it now. I'm working on finishing up a degree. I'm going to have some books in the pipeline, start publishing some books, going down the path of writing. And then this mentorship program, which that hasn't quite hit yet the goal, which is the goal is to have multiple people a year that I'm running through a program. And they get certified at the end, and they're successful, and I can see their success stories, them hitting their goals, whatever it is they want to do. So that's something I need to work really hard at. I just haven't had the time really to develop it as well as it could be, but it's no worry. I know it's a good concept. I know that it's something that's going to serve people the way that I want it, the way I envision it. It'll get there. I'm not sweating it.
No, I can definitely, it's amazing. It's definitely, I can see it. And I think it's important that I don't know of any other woman who does a mentorship program because, again, society is society, and we all have a lot of men that we look up to or looked up to.
Right.
And there are and some of them give great advice, but there's certain things that only another woman can understand.
Absolutely.
In this industry,
Absolutely.
especially also.
Absolutely.
Um, so I said already earlier, your latest project came out in June, I believe. Do you have any other things how's the rest of the year looking for you? Do you have anything else coming out that people might want
I
to look forward to?
don't have anything musically coming out. I have something I'm working on right now for the label that I might
Mhm.
put out digitally in October. But beyond that, I don't have anything on the back burner other than this album that I've been slowly carving away. It's really been a much slower process than I imagined. And that's just because my energy has been in so many different places, not
Mhm.
just music. As a parent, I have
Oh,
two kids in these very, very critical points in life. My son's in college and, trying to see, still have to be a parent. My
mhm.
daughter's in high school. Like, my energy sort of, pulled in a lot of different directions. So by the time you come back to, okay, let's put on the artist hat, sometimes it's not as much energy, creative juice left to
Mhm.
sort of put what you need to put. So it's going slow, but it's going to be good. I intend to make this really a statement. Like, yeah. So
I'm
that's what's coming up.
I'm looking forward to it. And when is
Yeah.
your next date for your residency? I don't know when I'm gonna put this interview out, but might be right before it, or I don't know. Do you have your
I
next
think
date
my
yet?
next date is in November.
Oh, okay. It's definitely
Can't
coming up.
remember exactly if it's in November or December is my next date. But I am playing in Portland this weekend, which I'm excited about. I haven't played in Portland yet. So I'm really excited about that. But yeah, I think my next date is in November.
Sweet.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, yeah,
Interesting. I'm
yeah.
looking forward to that as well. And then I have one of one of my questions that I ask every guest is to name me three tracks that they associate with dance. And this is probably one of the broadest questions that I can ask. Um, but some tracks that not genre specific, but they remind you of dance, whether that was you having a dance floor moment or you playing the song and giving somebody else a special moment on the dance floor. Anything that comes to mind.
That is one of the hardest questions. I definitely Carrie Chandler is always on that when I think of just dance. When I think of
Yeah.
you want to put a figure, um, Carrie is always there. Um, Larry Heard is always there. I don't know if I'd say dance, but as far as um, someone iconic when it comes to the development of deep house. Um, Masters at Work is always there for me in terms of a certain era. I wouldn't say necessarily like right now because we don't have moments for me, as far as I'm concerned, moments in dance. Like we had moments, we had events when certain records came out. I remember where it was like globally everybody is playing this one record and globally people are responding the same way to a piece of music that has come out. Um, so we don't have those types of moments like that anymore. And there was like Masters at Work provided a lot of moments like that
Mhm.
in the 90s where we were all like, oh my God, have you heard this remix? Have you heard that remix? And they would just turn these like regular songs into these like anthems. So I think I'll be hopeless at this. I remember I did this one thing a friend of mine got me into. My friend Jane Fitz, I had this thing. I think like this magazine in Berlin. I forget what it's called. They do this thing where they have DJs come on and they listen to a track and they're supposed to name that track. It's a fun thing. And all these tracks were just like totally regular tracks that I knew, that I owned. And I was like, I could not ID any of them. I know the music.
Oh, I know
But when
that
it
feeling.
comes to like, okay, tell me the artist, tell me the label, I'm like, blah. I just go into a
Got it.
complete
Yeah.
just oh, and one I could think, I think it was Mood to Swing. Um Mood to Swing is definitely. I do love what's that song they did? I think it did You Gotta Learn How to Love. It was Kim
Mm.
English. That was a massive moment that you would play it and people would just be crying on the dance floor because the lyrics were like, you got to learn to love yourself. And just the way she delivered it and the production behind it was just magical. So yes, I suck at this. Definitely would not ask me 3 tracks. I'm just terrible.
That's fine. You named the artist. That's totally fine. That's totally fine. Don't worry. But I do,
Terrible.
in relation to that, I do have another question. Is when you play, is there something specifically that you, um, I guess, pay attention to? Um,
People,
People.
people. I mean, it's very important for me to be in fellowship with people when I'm playing. Like I'm a dancer at heart. Like I'd play records like I was dancing on the dance floor. What would I want to listen to on the dance floor? What would be that moment where I'm like, okay, I need a shift? What would be the moment where I was like, okay, I need this moment right now where I'm just like going crazy? What is that moment where I'd be like, okay, now I need to just sort of like close my eyes and shift a little bit into a reflective mode? What is that moment where I just want to sing to something that has been played a lot, but it still hits? Like, what is that moment for me where, okay, let's just play something that we all know that's not breaking new ground, but we just love this song anyway.
Right.
What would be that moment where I'm like, okay, hit me with something. I have no idea what this is. It's completely out there, but I'm going to be like, okay, I don't know where this is going, but okay, take me there, you know?
Mhm.
So, um, I'm looking for that. I'm looking for those connections with people. I love seeing that person that's all the way out in the corner, like, oh yeah, they're with me on this. They're processing this the way I'm processing this. Or this person that's like, oh, they're having their own experience, their own party, they're creating their own their own story going on. So it's fun. So I'm never in a form where I'm like, I'm over here doing my thing and I'm the best DJ there ever lived type thing. And I got to get the mixes just right. Like, because if I'm caught up with that, then I'm not having that moment of
Mhm.
fellowship um, with the audience, because that just really fuels me in such a way that I just keep reaching new heights. Just, okay, let's go, let's push it, let's push it. But
Mhm.
there are some very, very technical things behind the scenes also that are going on in terms of the setup. Um, I need to make sure that I earn the trust, very important. If you're talking about very specific foundational things of DJing, you have to earn the trust of people before they will allow you to take them places. So it's very important for me to establish, okay, guys, I'm on your side, but you're going to have to trust me that I know what I'm doing. But I'm going to give you some ways for you to find your entry point and then just be prepared. I'm going to take you. It could just be a house journey. It could be a house mixed with African music mixed with some random down tempo song. But with the residency, that's the best thing about it. You can build that trust with people. People have an expectation once they understand, oh, this is how you show up. Okay, great. I'm with that. So
Mhm.
you can go do whatever you want to do. And I'm okay with that. So yeah, that communication with the dancers is key. Kind of one of the reasons that I hate when people ask me to make mixes for them. I don't like to do that. I need people to really like do what I do.
Mhm.
Yeah.
This was my last question. I just wanted to thank you so much for agreeing to this interview twice and taking the
Yes, I felt
time.
terrible every time. Last time I was late, and
No, listen,
yeah,
Zoom is Zoom, and I'm glad it exists. One last
yes.
thing though, is there anything that I haven't touched on and you wanted to get off your chest, or anything that you wanted to add and or say before we?
Um, Not really. Just follow
Okay.
my mentorship if you're really feeling like you don't know what to do. I think that's really important to me right now, just to get people to know like there is a way. You don't have to suffer. There's always a way to figure out. Is this your dream to really be in music in some way, to show up in some way? Don't let people take that away from you. Like regardless whether you work with somebody or not, don't let people take that. Find your way to stay in it in a way that feels comfortable for you, in a way that aligns with your values as a person. um, don't let people take away your joy. Like, don't let people take away your joy. That's really it. I think I've said more than a lot. uh
Thank you so much
yeah, of
for your
course.
insight and your
Of
advice. And
course.
I don't know if you could, if you saw me, but just know everything you said, I was shaking my head like really good.
No, I saw
I
you the
was in
whole
a, you
time.
did? Okay, okay. I was just like, oh my God, yes, everything is hitting. And so
Yeah,
thank you
no, I
again.
saw you the whole time. I couldn't actually be able to do it if I was looking at a blank screen. That would like really be bad.
Yeah,
Like,
and I don't know, so I just let it be and made sure that
good,
people could see you. So thank you again,
good.
Jennifer. I'll see you
Yeah, of
at your
course.
residency, the latest, maybe before. Um,
Yes,
have a great
of
time in
course.
Portland.
Yes, thank you so much.
Bye. Thank
Ciao.
you. Ciao.